What is going on, everybody? I'm Marcus Whitman. Welcome to the Fully Inflated Football Podcast for the week. Today we're going to be talking about the studs and duds from Week 15 of the NFL season, breaking down the games, whose stock is rising and falling, and then we'll get into the mailbag that you guys have sent in, all those questions on Twitter, so looking forward to that. Just a little bit of housekeeping here. I've been promising this out on podcasting services, and that has not changed. We've actually made some progress. It's made it out on definitely Spotify. It's trying to seemingly push its way through on SoundCloud, but we're close. I've used up my storage space for the month, but as soon as the month rolls over into the new year, I should be all caught up to date and really have this thing full go as a legitimate podcast, which is exciting. But as long as we're here on YouTube, do make sure you hit that like button. It helps me out. And then, guys, if you're shopping for tickets for concerts or sporting events, maybe trying to catch an NFL game here before the season ends, do use SeatGeek. It'll get you, the most convenient way to get the best tickets, the best prices, and use promo code ThatFranchiseGuy to save us all a little money. So let's get into the film breakdowns this week. We're going to go through all 16 games. First, we're going to talk about our star of the week and then our dud of the week. And these are ratings here. Of course, you know this if you've been around, but if you're new, you're going to see numbers here next to all these players. They come from my Madden custom roster that I do every year. The number one custom roster for Madden. It might be a video game rating, but these do reflect how well these guys are playing in real life and kind of how I perceive these players standing in the league. So it does translate. It doesn't just translate. It is literally just how good these players have been playing. So let's get into it here. Our star of the week is going to be Chris Jones. Definitely an under-the-radar season that was kind of spotlighted on a big Thursday night game here against the Chargers. Interior defensive lineman, just a freak athlete. Was a mid-round pick a couple years ago and has done nothing but develop since. And, he's got, 14 sacks this year. He's just unblockable up the middle. They've got good guys on the edge, too, so that Chiefs edge rush is really coming along lately, and Chris Jones is just breaking out. So +2, 86 to an 88 for Chris Jones. And then our dud of the week, not a huge player here, but Morgan Burnett has really not worked out for the Pittsburgh Steelers, strong safety. A player that's had hamstring injuries really throughout his entire career, and it has not made an impact on the Steelers team, and really, I would think, is probably on his way to getting released and being one of those kind of bouncing around veteran safeties moving on for the rest of his career. So 79 to a 76, -3 for Morgan Burnett. So that's the star and the dud of the week. And now let's get into the game reviews. And I do have graphics for you guys, as promised. It is a podcast, but this originated as a video on YouTube, so I want to finish out the season strong. So starting with the Chargers and Chiefs game here, this was an excellent game, and seeing Philip Rivers now win a couple big, nationally televised games. The last time he was truly relevant, the NFL was not as big as it is now, and people are finally starting to see now Philip Rivers in the spotlight, just winning games. And I've always been a big Philip Rivers guy. It's great to see him kind of getting recognized for the type of player he is. He's persevered through a lot, through a team that has done a pretty bad job putting, good championship caliber talent around him for the majority of his career. And now they've actually put championship talent around him, and they moved the franchise. So he really has had a rough go of a career, but has persevered and been excellent. It's great to see him winning. And now the Chargers are a lot of people's pick, myself included, to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. So it's definitely exciting if you've stuck with the Chargers throughout this move. And then as for the Chiefs, I'm not necessarily saying that I've changed my opinion on the Chiefs, because I did say about 3 weeks ago that I'm fading them now that we're heading into colder weather games and just a young quarterback. It's a poor defense, and I just don't know if this team is necessarily built this year for playoff football. They definitely could, go and win a Super Bowl. It's an incredibly talented team, but there are definitely flaws to this roster. I think Patrick Mahomes is amazing, but he's still young. and there's going to be some inconsistencies that pop up in a 70-play football game. And, we saw in the second half of this game, he couldn't do enough to close it. And I don't know if that necessarily is a poor reflection of Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs definitely seemed to just kind of buckle up, call a lot of screens, and they ended up just giving Phillip Rivers enough chances. So I'm not putting this game on Patrick Mahomes. He was actually incredible in this game. He's going to go up on the roster this week. But I don't think he's quite there with like your Brady, Rodgers, even Phillip Rivers as we enter the playoffs. So this was a big game. Whoever can end up winning this division, I think, has a real shot at winning the AFC. I think the Chargers definitely are in a good position. The Chiefs definitely need that home field, though. I don't see the Chiefs winning 3 straight road games to go to the Super Bowl. So the studs and duds for the week, Mike Williams, obviously going to be a stud this week. He's a guy I was not very high on coming out of Clemson. I was definitely a little turned off by his 40 time, but he did come out and run like a 4.5 at his pro day. So you definitely saw the 4.5 speed version of Mike Williams in this game. This season he's been very good. We knew he was a good jump ball, contested catch guy, but to see him get open and have some run after the catch ability is really impressing me. Kind of flashbacks of like DeAndre Hopkins a little bit, because DeAndre Hopkins was not this refined freak coming out of Clemson. He actually was very similar physically to Mike Williams. So I don't know if Mike Williams is going to turn into DeAndre Hopkins, who is now, in my opinion, the best receiver in the NFL. But he has all the tools, and he's got a great quarterback to help him develop. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see if he can continue this upward trend. And you put this version of Mike Williams with Keenan Allen heading into the playoffs with getting Melvin Gordon back. I mean, gosh, look out for these Chargers. And then at running back, Dentrez Newsome, butchered that name, definitely showed some burst, +2, missing the 2 there in the graphic, but whatever, 67 to a 69. And then the cornerback, Michael Davis, he went up a few weeks ago, but he's getting a lot of playing time here at cornerback, and I guess I hadn't even looked into why that is. I'm assuming that Trevor Williams must be hurt because Desmond King and Casey Hayward are out there, but Michael Davis starting at outside corner looking really good, +3, 67 to a 70. Definitely a player to keep an eye on there. And then on the Chiefs side of the ball, he's running backs, the D. Williams brothers. And Damian Williams is actually a player I've always secretly really liked. I really liked him in Miami, but then they kept changing the guard at running back and never really gave him the true opportunity. But he did have a little window of the starter there, and I actually thought he looked pretty damn good in Miami. But they end up letting him go to Kansas City here, where my comparison for Damian Williams was always Spencer Ware. And sure enough, here he is backing up Spencer Ware. Spencer Ware gets hurt, and Damian Williams looks just like Spencer Ware, who we know is a good player. So basically the same type of athlete. He's got that size at running back that I just drool for, that 5'11", 225 build that the Chiefs love. This next guy, Darrell Williams, falls right into that kind of range as well. Darrell Williams, another guy who you could definitely compare to Spencer Ware. He's coming out of LSU, didn't start at LSU, kind of view it as this plotting, almost fullback type, but hell, he looks quick. He was doing a great job in pass protection. So +3, 64 to a 67. Chiefs just proving yet again, along with the Charger or the Steelers with Jalen Samuel, and what we've seen from James Conner this year, that running back, it's great to have these flashy, exciting running backs, but frankly, it's just not going to change the outcome of many football games. You can plug guys in and get production as long as everything else is in place. So let's talk about Patrick Mahomes, who is going to go up +1, 81 to an 82. Kind of hit on him earlier. I'm obviously super impressed. The only reason I come off with this negative talking point about Patrick Mahomes is because he's been the love child of the NFL this year, and I'm just saying pump the brakes just a little bit. I think he definitely has the ceiling to be the best quarterback we've ever seen. You can see all of that, but he's still a little turnover prone. He has been throwing to wide open receivers all year. Just think about the fact that this offense last year, which is pretty much the same thing with Tyreek Hill and Kelsey, you could say they got Sammy Watkins, but he hasn't really been out there anyway. But with this play calling and these weapons, Alex Smith was viewed as a potential MVP candidate for about 12 weeks of the season. And we've seen what Alex Smith is without that talent around him. So I'm not trying to pick apart Patrick Mahomes. I think he's great, but I think there's a decent chance we see some sides of Patrick Mahomes with his kind of gunslinger mentality that he might not be quite as efficient or safe with the football as some people might project him to be as the MVP of the league, which I definitely would give him the MVP. He's been fantastic. So then we talked about Chris Jones, and then Justin Houston's really coming back alive here on the edge. He just looks fantastic. He's looking like his old self. So plus 186 to an 87 for Justin Houston. Next up, we have the Houston Texans, who went into the Jets and actually almost lost. I took the Jets on the spread in this game. It was a 7-point spread, and it was a 7-point game. So the Jets kind of showed up, but lost it at the very end. They actually had the lead, and Sam Darnold looked fantastic in this game. Darnold definitely started to show some really nice signs. He's got some nice life to him. Not only does the football he throws have a lot of life, but he brings some nice energy. He's not this quiet California cool guy. He definitely has these guys playing for him. So you're definitely encouraged by what you see from Sam Darnold. The Jets need to do a better job building around him so that he has a legitimate chance in his second season. But some nice energy coming out of that organization as they head into Darnold's sophomore season. And then for the Texans, it was kind of business as usual. They've been winning a lot of close games this year. It's definitely a redeeming quality of this team is that they can really play their best football in the fourth quarter with J.J. Watt and obviously DeAndre Hopkins and then Deshaun Watson. Like, just superstars show up in the fourth quarter, and that's really what you see from the Texans. Though I do think they have some holes on their team. They might now be looking at a 2 seed, and in the current landscape of the NFL where everyone seems to be able to beat anyone, I don't see why the Texans couldn't win the AFC. I'm not going to pick it to happen, I don't think, but they've definitely put themselves in a good position for that conversation. So the studs and duds from this game, DeAndre Hopkins was fantastic. He's the best receiver in the NFL right now. There's really no denying it. Pro Football Focus has him as the best non-quarterback in the NFL, the most valuable non-quarterback, and I would agree with that. Just you can't cover him. He runs great routes, but he's got great hands. He's explosive. He's got everything you want in a wide receiver. And with kind of the regression of Antonio Brown, with Julio Jones not being quite as dominant, it's pretty clearly DeAndre Hopkins right now. And then another D here in Houston, we've got Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, and DeAndre Carter, who was picked up off of Philly, I believe, was cut to their practice squad, and Houston picked him up in need of a slot receiver, and he's come in and been very explosive. He's a good kick returner as well, but just kind of that smaller-bodied, super quick guy. Put the ball in his hands, let him go to work tight, but he's doing a good job in that slot position and has been a weapon for this team. So plus 364 to a 67 for DeAndre Carter. And then for the Jets, Robbie Anderson, the last 2 weeks now with Sam Darnold coming back, these last 2 weeks has gotten back into some chemistry with Sam Darnold and starting to show some of that upside again that he was kind of flaunting earlier in the year before a big drop-off under Josh McCown. And then here's a guy, Frankie Lavu on the edge, came out of Washington as kind of a hybrid off-ball edge rusher type, and the Jets bring him in here, and they play him at that 3-4 outside linebacker spot. He's a little undersized. He's like 6'3", 238, which is a little light for an edge, but you're seeing the benefits of having the smaller, quicker guy as Lavu can really get out there and cover the flats and coverage, come back into the hooks, and he can do a really nice job in coverage, but he's doing a good job in run defense as well, and maybe a little bit getting after the quarterback as well, but mainly just there as kind of a nice versatile piece, kind of a Bill Belichick type of guy, like a gap control dude who can play cover. So plus 4 for Frankie Lavu. Not a super high upside player, but has sparked some things and kept some things in front of them for this Jets defense that's played a little better lately. And then we've got the Browns at Broncos game. This game was definitely entertaining. considering you got Baker Mayfield out there. It's been a fun team to watch. Not a ton of repercussions in this one, other than the Browns continuing to get some momentum here. The Broncos just not the same team without Chris Harris and without Emmanuel Sanders, just two of their best players on either side of the ball, and it showed in this one. As for the Browns, they've collected so much momentum heading into next year. They're definitely going to be the biggest hyped team, I think, heading into next season. And I think it's justified as well. Like, Baker's looked fantastic, and this defense has so much potential with how many young players have really broken out this year for the Browns. They definitely need more playmakers on offense, and I think Freddie Kitchens has done a good job with this offense, so we'll see what they do with their coaching staff. I don't think they should keep Greg Williams. I think you consider Freddie Kitchens, though. He's shown that he can be a good play caller here. You definitely consider other people as well. Like, if you can get Lincoln Riley to come here and reunite with Baker, you do that. But I definitely agree with everything that's being said out there about how you got to hire an offensive coordinator to be your head coach, because everyone's looking for good play callers. If you hire that guy to be your offensive coordinator, he's just going to leave to be a head coach, and you're back from square one yet again. That's why I don't like the idea of a Vic Fangio being a head coach, or the Browns hiring Greg Williams. Like, it might be good for a year if you can have a good coordinator, but you're going to lose that coordinator. That's the exact same thing that happened with the Falcons. I actually said back then that this team is going to regret letting Kyle Shanahan leave and not firing their head coach and hiring Kyle Shanahan to take over the Falcons, because it's just a more valuable, harder to find piece, is that good offensive mind in an offensive league. So the studs and duds from this game: Brashad Perriman, maybe we should just call him Zombie Brashad Perriman, plus 167 to a 68, continuing to get involved in this offense. Still don't think very highly of him as a player, but finding his role here with Baker and the deep ball here. And then Jabril Peppers is having a monster season. Definitely getting comfortable. It was a guy that really, until this year, NFL teams hadn't really figured out how to use him. And the Browns have figured it out. It's that strong safety role where he can take advantage of his speed and quickness and ball skills in the short to intermediate part of the field, and he is thriving. Really like what he has brought to the Cleveland Browns, and that is a part of the field that traditionally was not valued as much, but with the way that modern offenses are changing, that slot corner, strong safety, quick outside linebacker that can get to those annoying screens and rub routes and all the, trick, I don't know if you want to call it trick plays, but the misdirection and stuff, the bunch formations, like all these new kind of schemes here in the NFL. A guy like Jabril Peppers has added value in that league framework. So a really good piece there for Jabril Peppers. He's only going to continue to get better as he becomes smarter and learns that position better, assuming the Browns continue to use him in the same way and don't try to move him back to like free safety or have him play like full-on linebacker. Like, he is perfect for this role right here. And then for the Broncos, a guy that used to be really good at that safety position, Darian Stewart, just getting older here, not able to kind of help the guys around them in that secondary as much this year. So he's dropped off, just off of age. So minus 277 to a 75 for Darian Stewart there for the Denver Broncos. So next up, we've got the Tennessee Titans at the New York Giants. Giants come out and say that Eli Manning is their future quarterback for next year. What a joke. Like, did you not learn anything from what your old buddy Tom Coughlin did with Blake Bortles in Jacksonville? Like, that was a train wreck. And you think bringing Eli Manning, who might as well be Blake Bortles, back another year is going to just magically get better? I mean, come on. Eli's been objectively, not even just opinionated, like any kind of metric or analytic or stat, whatever, or just the eye test will tell you that Eli Manning's not a top five, or he is a bottom five quarterback in the league for the last 4 or 5 years. So to just come out and say here before you even consider a free agent or a draftee that he's going to be your quarterback again, like, that's just terrible team management. Just a joke. And then for the Titans, they continue to find their identity here, which is defense and running the football. And I like it. I don't think it's a formula that's going to lead them through the AFC or, frankly, even into the playoffs, which with how the Colts and the Ravens are playing right now. But definitely under Vrabel, kind of establishing an identity here. Could be picking up some speed heading into next season. Even if they make the playoffs, I think it's going to be a short stint. But you like what you're seeing from this defense. Derrick Henry is finally breaking out. So nice things to say about Tennessee. A frustrating thing about this team is you just didn't know what team you were going to get every Sunday. That's changing a little bit. They want to run the ball and play good defense, and I can respect that they're finding their identity here towards the end of their first season under their new coach. So definitely a good sign there. The good coaches are able to establish an identity, and it sounds simple, but you look at like the bottom 10 teams in the power rankings, like you won't be able to tell me what their team identity is. And that's just how you put together a good game plan, is you know the strengths of your team. So they're definitely learning that as they go here in their first season with the new coach. So the studs and duds here: Dennis Kelly, veteran, tackle, guard, wherever he's played throughout his career, but they got him playing at right tackle with Conklin going down, and he's playing great. Graded out well this week, +3, 66 to a 69. He had played in a stint earlier this year too, graded out great. So a veteran guy that has proved to be a really solid backup there as a tackle. Derrick Henry going to go up, just mauling dudes. I think this is the best version of Derrick Henry, which is, that's a damn good running back. That's basically what the Jags wish they had in Leonard Fournette, is a guy that you just can't bring down, and you can give the ball 30 times a game and just wear dudes down, and that's perfect. He's not super explosive. He definitely moves well for his size, but I don't think he's very quick or any of that, or is ever going to be like an elite receiving threat. And I still don't think that this style, where the team knows you're going to be running the ball 30 times a game, is a long-term plan for the Titans. I think you got to turn into a passing offense at some point if you want to have Super Bowl aspirations, but he has, like I said, given them an identity, which is something they've lacked for years. And then you flip over the defensive side of the ball, they are playing really well over there. So Kevin Byard, +1, 85 to an 86. He had come down earlier in the year, but he's starting to play well like he did last season in his breakout season last year. I still think Kevin Byard's one of the, top 7 safeties in the NFL, and he's a guy that they had him playing much more in the first half of the year as kind of that box safety. I like Byard more as that center fielding type, and with Earl Thomas out of the league right now, he'll be back, but I don't know what type of Earl Thomas we're going to get next year. Kevin Byard is right there, in my opinion, with like Malik Hooker and maybe a few other guys that I'm not mentioning here, but just that true free safety, that center fielder type that can take away a large portion of the field. It's so valuable. There's not a lot of players that can do it, but I think Kevin Byard is one of those. And then Rashaan Evans, first-round pick for the Titans this year, linebacker, really, really struggled out the gate. But he wasn't even getting a ton of playing time, so now he's out there on the field. They still have a bit of a 3-man rotation here with Jayon Brown as well, and Woodyard. But when Rashaan Evans has been out there, and he's now getting a little over 50% of the snaps now, probably about 60, 70%. He's had 2 great games in a row, starting to show that first-round upside as a highly versatile linebacker, probably like a quicker Donta Hightower who doesn't really offer the pass rushing element, but reminded me a lot of him at Alabama, even though his body type's a little different. Going to have to become his own type of player, just because he's not as big as Hightower, but you get what I'm saying there. And then linebacker Jayon Brown, +1, 72 to a 73. He continues to play more and more and better every single week. Really impressed with what he is, just as I'm sure this team is. If they knew they were going to get this from Jayon Brown, who's now playing good run defense and playing well in coverage, like they probably wouldn't have drafted Rashaan Evans in the first round. But it is what it is, and you're not going to complain about having 3 good linebackers now like the Titans have, even though Woodyard's going to be on his way out. But they're definitely set at that position, which was clearly something they viewed as a need, having drafted Evans in the first. And then speaking of linebackers, B.J. Goodson, +1, 68 to a 69, playing really well for the Giants defense, who's been solid the last few weeks. Ogletree's been playing better in there too, so that they're getting some help at linebacker. Their D-line's really good. I think they really need help in the secondary and probably need some more elite talent in that front seven, but they at least have some good players there. And then our next game, Josh Johnson and the Deadskins heading into the dead Jacksonville Jaguars. This game was just gross. Don't really have much to say about this game. Washington's season just was ruined by injuries. They're technically still in the playoff hunt, but whatever. Like, so you get in. What good does that do? You just have a worse draft pick. Like, we know this team is not winning the Super Bowl with Josh Johnson. And then the Jags, there's nothing else I can say that hasn't been said. Like, they clearly have given up on the season. They cut Barry Church this week, which is just the beginning of we're going to see more and more of these veterans over the next 2 years getting older, getting released, playing terrible. It's just what happens when you get older. They don't have the cap capital to keep bringing in talent, so the Jags are going to fall apart. They don't have a quarterback. I don't know who they're going to be able to get because I don't think this draft is very good, so it's just going to be a rough stretch, I think, for both of these teams, honestly, because the Redskins, with this Alex Smith situation, we just did my 3-year power rankings, and these were 32 and 31, so, I mean, man, just rough for both these fan bases. I think Redskins probably have a brighter future than Jacksonville, but I don't think it's looking too good for either of them. And then the studs and duds here. Sean Dion Hamilton, he's a linebacker out of Alabama, a rookie. A bit of an undersized player, but was really had some good tape at Alabama, but fell because he wasn't extremely explosive. He's a good athlete, but not crazy fast like a Jayon Brown, who we just talked about. And he's not big enough to really be a huge impact in the run game. So a bit of an awkward player, but definitely an instinctive one. And he's been playing a lot for this Washington team, who has a ton of linebackers, but he's been playing well. So plus 167 to a 68. And then for the Jags, D.D. Westbrook continues to be like the only bright spot on this team for the last few weeks. But the explosive Heisman candidate from Oklahoma really coming into his own here. It's a good system for him, too, where he can run a lot of crossing routes, and Cody Kessler's going to work well in kind of that short catch-and-run game. So I think we're seeing Westbrook being agreeable with the quarterback change here in Jacksonville because Blake Bortles just couldn't get the ball into his hands very often, and we're seeing that more here in Jacksonville. So then Detroit at Buffalo, again, not a very good game. More entertaining than the last one we just talked about. Detroit has been a confusing team. They're definitely playing better defensively, which you would hope at the end of their first year here with a defensive coach. But offensively, they have lost all identity. Jim Bob Cooter's had a really hard time keeping up with the times. About 2 years ago, his offense was really innovative, and a lot of people thought Jim Bob Cooter was going to be a future head coach, but he's done a really bad job of continuing to grow this offense. And Matthew Stafford has honestly regressed. You asked me before the year, I would have said he was at the end of a list of quarterbacks that can kind of carry a bad offense, whether that's a lack of weapons or bad play calling. That's what an elite quarterback does, is he transcends kind of the when things aren't going well around them. Well, everything's going poorly around the Lions, but Matthew Stafford's gone down with them. And obviously you're going to go down when things are down around you as well, but Matthew Stafford has, really fallen off. Like, he just has been a very, very below average quarterback this year, which is honestly a little surprising to me. So I'll give him another chance next year to kind of, reboot this thing, I guess, because I've been very impressed with Matthew Stafford over the last couple of years. But you're definitely starting to get worried about what type of quarterback he really is. And then for Buffalo, it's just fun right now. Like, they're getting all these random-ass dudes to come in here and play well. Like Robert Foster, Isaiah McKenzie, Jason Kroom on the offensive side are like their biggest weapons. Just, literally like minimal investments that they got these guys. Undrafted players, free agents off the street. And then defensively, they're playing well as well. So you're definitely excited if you're a Bills fan. Josh Allen looks like at least an NFL starting quarterback, if not a potential star in this league. The jury's still out on Josh Allen. They're going to have to continue to develop him if he wants to be an elite quarterback, but he's definitely causing problems right now for defensive coordinators. So the studs and duds for this game, Kenny Golladay is going to go +1. We had taken him down, but he's been the biggest bright spot for this Lions offense. It's been pretty stagnant. You could argue that The running back, Kerryon Johnson's been a bright spot too, but he's been injured. So between Galladay and Kerryon Johnson, they've got two really good players to look forward to, and that's why you would have some optimism for this offense next year. They just need to get more of an identity throughout the rest of the organization offensively. So Galladay getting some of that love back was just incredible this week. Basically carried that offense. And then on defense, this Christian Jones has really come on. We talked about, who was it earlier? Frankie Lavu. Forgive me for not remembering that name off the top of my head. For the Jets, that kind of hybrid linebacker who can cover, really keep his gap control, play good run defense, and then maybe even offer a little pass rush as well. That's been Christian Jones playing in that Bill Belichick, Matt Patricia scheme that we talked about, and he's been the perfect fit here. So he has played outstanding. Really like what he's done in this scheme. He's reshaped his body a little bit, so definitely impressed with Christian Jones as just a versatile outside linebacker. And then for the Bills, Robert Foster continues to just blow us away. He can be a deep threat. He can work underneath. He's a really athletic dude. You know, he's not far off of like the Amari Coopers and Calvin Ridleys of the world as an athlete. He just hasn't had the right opportunities at Alabama where he was, but now he's in here as the number one receiver for Buffalo. It's not even close, and he's got a rapport with Josh Allen like it's one of the best quarterback wide receiver combos in the NFL over the last month. That's not even a joke. It really has been. So Robert Foster, totally breaking out here. We'll see how sustainable it is. I think it is. He's got the athleticism. He's still a young dude, and he's working well with this young quarterback. So definitely a player that we're going to want to think about in fantasy next year. And then Isaiah McKenzie, maybe not so much in terms of fantasy, but he has been a nice spark plug. We really make fun of Buffalo for their lack of weapons, so they just grabbed this little 5'7" speedster, and they've been able to do some fun things with him. I don't think he's something you're really looking to make a big part of your future, but he's done some nice things here. He's working well as an actual receiver too. So +2, 65 to a 67. Jason Kroom, believe it or not, a player I remember at Tennessee. He was a wide receiver. He's gained like 30 pounds since he got to the league. So he's now just coming into that body, learning how to play more tight end. Kind of a high upside, low ceiling type of player. So he's going to go +2, 64 to a 66. We'll see if they continue to develop him and use him, or if it's just kind of a short-term deal. There is some upside there, but he's not much of a blocker at the moment. And then Levi Wallace, a guy we talked about, I think last week, another Alabama undrafted guy. He's not the fastest corner, but he's a player that was coached well in college, obviously. He's come in here to Buffalo and is playing really well opposite of Tre'Davious White, who's actually struggled quite a bit the last couple weeks. So Levi Wallace has kind of stepped up, honestly. So 68 to a 69 for the Bills. I don't know why I said that like the Bears. Here we are talking about the Bears. So this game, I was actually at this game. Bears defense is just something else. I'm seriously thinking about starting to make some Khalil Mack, John Gruden Bears jerseys, John Gruden number 52 Bears jerseys. Really is a joke that the Bears were able to get him. Just a blessing. But even without Khalil Mack, it is a very good defense, but you see they're just on another level with Khalil Mack, who sacked Aaron Rodgers literally with his ass cracked this week. So, just ridiculous. As for the Packers, they've got no life, no energy, no talent on this team. Even Rodgers has been playing poorly. I think Rodgers will be able to turn it around. Tom Brady, when he was like 34, I think he had his worst year of his career. So, you're allowed to have a bad year. Even the best athletes of all time, they have a down year or two. But you're definitely concerned with Rodgers with the lack of accuracy this year. And can he get that back? Is it a swagger thing? Personally, I haven't seen a huge drop-off in his arm talent. Like, you'll still see him just sling the ball 70 yards downfield off his back foot. But it definitely seems to be in his head more than his arm. Now, his mechanics have been off, which have led to some inaccurate throws as well. But when the rest of the talent on this team is so bad, you're putting a lot of pressure on Rodgers. He's clearly feeling that pressure. It's thrown him off of his game. So they just have a lot of work to do. They do have a lot of cap space and a lot of draft picks to make that happen. They're going to have a new coach. It's going to be a huge change of direction. Their season's officially done. I don't get why they're still rolling Rodgers out there, who still has seemingly a bad knee. I would sit him down. I would do what the Panthers have done with Cam Newton. But the studs and duds from this game, we've got Jimmy Graham has been a huge disappointment. -2, 79 to a 77. I think Green Bay might actually look to cut him. He's just been a massive bust of a free agent signing. What is he supposed to do? Like, he doesn't block. He doesn't get open. Rodgers throws the ball to him in the fourth quarter, trying to make it a one-score game in a contested catch situation. He gets bodied out. The ball gets tipped up and intercepted. Like, he's not doing contested catches. He's basically pretty worthless out there. And then interior defensive lineman Tyler Lancaster. We talked about this guy last week. He's just a mean-mugging dude. The cold weather doesn't affect him. He's playing great run defense. If Green Bay has done anything right in the last 5 years, and there hasn't been a lot of good things that this organization has done in terms of player development, but the defensive line is definitely one area where they really get these guys to play well. And Tyler Lancaster gets a +2, 66 to a 68. And then at cornerback, we have Sherrick McManus for the Bears, who has come in, been kind of a career special teamer here, but he's playing in the nickel. With the injury to the other corner there, Bryce Callahan, and he's doing a good job. I think most of us kind of thought this dude was a special team specialist. Turns out he can actually play some corner as well, and there's a reason they've kept him on the roster for this long. So good for Sherrick McManus, proving his game on the actual defensive side of the ball. Then we got Dallas at the Indianapolis Colts. Dallas getting shut out in this game. Dak Prescott just is who he is. He's not a franchise quarterback, in my opinion. They're going to bring him back. They're going to pay him a bunch of money. Luckily, he's got weapons. In theory, he should have a really good offensive line next year and a really good defense. I'm not going to say you can't win a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott, but you need perfect health. You need great play calling. You need things to go your way. It's tough because they have a window, obviously, and Dak's not the worst quarterback. But if they could somehow bring in even do a Kirk Cousins type of upgrade, and I'm not that high on Kirk Cousins, but get a top 15 quarterback, a guy that can make a big play in the fourth quarter when you need it, and not overthrow your receiver who's wide open 40 yards downfield. That's the difference between a 10 or 11 win playoff team, which this team very well could be for the next 2 years, and just being an actual Super Bowl contender. It's the same reason Minnesota moved on from Case Keenum. So it's tough. I like the rest of the team. Dak, I don't hate Dak. I just think we know what he is at this point. And then for the Colts, huge win. They have officially got themselves in this playoff race here. It's between them, the Ravens, and the Titans, and who's going to finish strong. I like betting on Andrew Luck in that situation. This defense is playing lights out. And honestly, Luck hasn't even had to do that much for this team the last few weeks, even though I think he could if they needed to lean on him. But I like what they're doing offensively. A lot of heavier sets, running the ball, using this really good offensive line. And then defensively, they just play tough. So the studs and duds here for the Cowboys, Dalton Schultz, tight end I liked coming out of Stanford. He continues to get more and more reps, looking good as a blocker, as a receiver, a good weapon here. He's definitely filling a void that they have missed in Jason Witten's presence. I'm not going to say he is Jason Witten, but a similar type of player, and very well could continue to develop and be a favorite weapon of Dak Prescott's. And then La'el Collins, the tackle at LSU, who's had his ups and downs in his career, to say the least. He's moved around the offensive line, but he's settling at right tackle the last couple weeks. He's been there all year and really struggled early, but we know he's got a lot of physical talent, and he's done a good job of protecting that right side of the line, getting some push. So stock up, I guess, for La'el Collins. And then Noah Brown, he's an intriguing player. He's been on this roster now for, 3 years? This is his third year, I think. out of Ohio State, was a 7th-round pick. Physical dude, big, thick, physical receiver. Poor man's Des Bryant really coming out, which is why Dallas was a good fit for him. And he's finally getting on the field. He's not starting necessarily, but he's been out there. He's getting some targets now, and he's doing a good job. So keep an eye on him. Nothing crazy here, but plus 165 to a 66. Then we've got on the Colts side, Danico Autry, just another one of these D linemen for Indianapolis. They got a bunch of them. Autry had a great game this week, 4 hurries, versatile D lineman. He'll play some edge, he'll play some interior. He's like a 6'5", 275, kind of Michael Bennett type of athlete, but they're doing a really good job with him. And then Pierre Desir, the cornerback here for the Colts, he's been their best corner this year, plus 173 to a 74, a veteran guy playing well. Now we've got the Raiders at the Bengals. Gross game. We're just going off the PFF grades here. I didn't watch this game. I'm sorry, but I'm also not going to lie to you and say that I did. So Eric Harris, plus 266 to a 68. Safety who's been in and out of the lineup, but they've had a lot of moving parts on that defense, and he's kind of been a mainstay. I mean, he's a veteran. I don't think he's any big piece of the future here, unless John Gruden just never changes his personality and that he just wants 30-year-old safeties out there all the time. But, he's filled in. He's kept things in front of him. The Raiders defense has been playing a little better the last few weeks, and Eric Harris has had an uptick in snap counts for really the last 2 months. And then Rashaan Melvin, the corner here, they signed him from Indianapolis. We've seen him play at a high level as a cornerback 1 in the past. Really wasn't doing that for the first half of the year, but he's had a couple good weeks in a row now. Coming into his own here in Oakland. Between him and Gary and Conley, you could do worse at corner for sure for Oakland. Definitely not going to be their number 1 need heading into the offseason, though they frankly could use pretty much every position on the roster to be upgraded. And then the Bengals, just, they get the win. Like, good for you, I guess. Home favorites without your quarterback. Good to, I guess, get some momentum. Like, I don't know. I'm reaching at stuff to talk about this game, guys. I'm not going to lie. Like, things are not good for either of these teams. For Cincinnati, you're probably bringing your coach back, and you're probably looking at another year just like this next year, and it's rough, but this is an organization that is content with mediocrity, and when that's the case, you're going to kind of keep the status quo. John Ross is going to be the faller here. Really disappointing season. He's shown flashes, but man, he's a raw receiver. We know he's got the athleticism, and again, we've seen flashes of it. Even some really nice catches, toe-tapping stuff, contested balls, some nice catch-and-run stuff, but he just can't do it consistently. And I know Andy Dalton has been hurt the last few weeks, but he wasn't doing it consistently with Dalton either. So, just until we see it, it's going to be really hard to buy into John Ross. And then we've got Arizona at Atlanta. I only saw, parts of this game. Arizona, there's not much else to really say about them. They just have a lot of work to do. I'll just leave it at that. And then Atlanta, they finally get that offense going. You look back on this season, and people will point to the injuries, which I'm always going to say that is a legitimate excuse. People don't want to listen when you say, oh, we were hurt, we'll be back next year. Like, no one wants to hear that stuff, but it's true. Every year, the healthy teams at the end of the year are usually the ones heading to the playoffs. But Atlanta, they haven't been ravaged by injuries compared to some of these other teams. Like, they had some heavy-hitting injuries on the defensive side of the ball, but they've got Deion Jones back now. Their safeties are out. But you're going to look back on this year and wish that this offense could have done this consistently every week. And, you point to the offensive line, definitely struggling this year. You point to Matt Ryan having some inconsistencies. It's just kind of a disappointing season all around for Atlanta, but they should be back. They should be relevant next year. I just think this team probably missed their Super Bowl window because you're going to have to start paying some of these defensive guys, and you are now paying Matt Ryan like $30 million, which, you could say that's worth it or not. I don't know. I don't think he really elevates the play of anyone on the offensive side. So let's talk about the studs and duds here. Chase Edmonds has been taking a lot of reps from David Johnson that clearly don't see as much of a talent differential between Edmonds or David Johnson, or my theory is they've admitted that this season is a loss and David Johnson's coming off a big wrist injury and they just want to preserve him after they just gave him a big contract, which I think is perfectly fair. And if that's the case, David Johnson could be a bit of a sleeper next year. But Chase Edmonds has done a good job being that guy that takes those carries away from David Johnson. I liked him coming out. Some people liked him even more than I did. He's just a really athletic dude. He's got decent size. Just honestly kind of a high upside running back that they also probably want to see what they really have in him. And he's definitely been, frankly, their best offensive weapon the last 3 weeks. Like, I don't know, Cardinals fans, is that fair? Are you guys even watching the games now? I don't know. Then you got Brandon Williams. He's in his third year out of Texas A&M, just a freak athlete, like a 4.37 40 guy. He's over 6 feet tall, just has not been able to get on the field, just, doesn't have the technique or whatever. But they're putting him out there. Either he's developing or he just is playing because they want to see what they have in some of these young guys. But he's done well this week. He did a good job out there against a bunch of good Atlanta receivers. So, we'll continue to monitor Brandon Williams, who's a really high upside corner. And then we've got the Atlanta Falcons side, just Steven Means here, an edge rusher / he's more of a run defending edge guy. But they've got a collection of these guys between Brooks Reed. I'm slipping on some of these names here, but they definitely like to have that good run defending edge rusher that they can play there on first and second down, especially when you've got like Vic Beasley, who is just miserable against run defense. So he's kind of out there to supplement what you're missing from Vic Beasley. Then we got Tampa Bay at the Baltimore Ravens, who have been a much better football team, a much, higher floor team since they went to Lamar Jackson. I think their ceiling's probably about the same, honestly, just because I don't think Joe Flacco's very good at all. But I don't think this has a Super Bowl type of ceiling. I don't think you can win playoff games with this current version of Lamar Jackson. And then for Tampa, they played valiantly, I guess. Like, I don't know. You just aren't going to go in with Jameis Winston and a bad defense and beat this team. But they did play okay on both sides. I don't know. There's not a whole lot to say about Tampa. It's going to be an interesting offseason. I don't like what they did in this offseason. It's definitely going to be interesting to see what they do at quarterback. So let's just get into the studs and duds here. Vita Vea has been playing very well. Say what you will about drafting a nose tackle with a top 13 pick. I have been very critical of this team for doing so, but he's proven to be a good nose tackle, which, like I've said a couple weeks ago, you take that guy with the 13th pick, he damn well better be a good run defender, or that is just inexcusable. That's like when the Jags took Tyson Alualu like 10 years ago. And then Gerald McCoy's actually been a pretty big disappointment this year. He's been their best defensive player, and he's just, he's fine, but he's not making those big impact plays, disrupting the quarterback at the same rate. He's not been as good in run defense, so he's just going to come down -291 to an 89. And then for the Ravens, they got some guys on this offense stepping up with this kind of new offensive scheme here. So Willie Snead has definitely benefited from the new offense. He's been a much better asset for this team with Lamar Jackson in there. So +173 to a 74. And then Gus Edwards continues to be a bruising back. I still question the upside there and how long he'll be the running back for this team. But for now, he's the hot hand, +269 to a 71. He is a big dude, like 6'1", 237, I think. Man. And then Marlon Humphrey. Ravens fans will like this one. I feel like I can't go on Twitter for an hour without seeing some Ravens fan asking for some Marlon Humphrey love, and here it is, 80 to an 81. He's having a great season. Big fan of Marlon Humphrey, just not as big as Ravens fans, clearly, but I think he is a hell of a corner and is going to continue to get better. Then we got Miami at Minnesota. Minnesota taking a big bounce back this week. They needed a win. They probably are headed to the playoffs now. They got to keep an eye on Philadelphia and finish strong here, but I don't think anyone is looking forward to playing the Vikings. Like, this is a team that has playoff experience. They have a mean coach that is going to figure out your offense in the playoffs. It's a talented roster. They have a big weakness, obviously, on that offensive line. But they showed some flashes of a team that you probably don't want to see in the playoffs. And then for Miami, like, this, just who they are, like, they just weren't talented enough to come in here and beat the Vikings. Like, Ryan Tannehill is, gosh, I can't believe maybe they're gone now, but there was still Ryan Tannehill truthers like a month ago. Like, it's always about his stats. Like, he's got fine stats, but God, you at no point are afraid of Ryan Tannehill to make a play and beat you. Like, it simply has been the case for his entire career. Like, when is Miami going to acknowledge that they have a certain floor with this guy quarterback? And I don't know if it's going to be this year. I really don't. Like, he did enough maybe to keep that job, which is, in my opinion, the worst case scenario for the Dolphins. It's the definition of a high floor, low ceiling team. So let's get into the studs and duds here. Jerome Baker, been a really good pick. Like, if anything's held up this year, like, just get good, fast, intermediate level defenders who can cover all these annoying offensive stuff. And Jerome Baker, he's like a 6'2", 215-pound linebacker, kind of like Telvin Smith. He's just a heat seeker. He's quick in coverage. He takes away that part of the field. Just a great year, and looks like he's going to be a good linebacker for years to come. And then Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think he's a great player in that area of the field we just talked about with Jerome Baker. But they've been missing Xavier Howard. They've been sticking Minkah as an outside corner, and he has really struggled out there. Granted, he was going against two of the best receivers in the NFL this week, so he was against the odds there. But he really has kind of, not going to say proved, but shown that he's not ready to be an outside corner, which I thought he was going to be a good outside corner. It seems that Miami is going to be best suited to keep him as a slot corner, as a strong safety, and look elsewhere for an outside corner. For whatever reason, he tested well for his agility work, but people did criticize how well he was going to be able to, like, flip his hips and cover outside, and it's definitely holding up. Absolutely. And then for the Vikes, Tyler Conklin, tight end out of, Central Michigan, blocking type, but, you look at this team who's used a slow tight end now for like 5 years in Kyle Rudolph and has used him as a receiver. Really no reason Tyler Conklin, in my opinion, can't do what Kyle Rudolph does. I've been saying since the preseason that Rudolph is in his last year in Minnesota, and he has done virtually nothing for this team. So could Tyler Conklin be the guy that takes over as the starting tight end? He probably is better as a receiver than David Morgan, who is a very good blocker for this team. But he showed some nice things here. Plus 166 to a 67. We'll continue to monitor him. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if he was the number one tight end for the Minnesota Vikings next season. And then wide receiver Aldrick Robinson. This was a really good pickup for this team. They went and got him with the struggles of Laquan Treadwell, who they were hoping would emerge as a nice third weapon here for this offense, and he just hasn't. So they go and get Aldrick Robinson. This is a guy that's kind of followed Kyle Shanahan around in his career, and here he is. He's a veteran dude, but he's making plays for this Vikings team all year, really, and we've seen him do this for about 5 years, just kind of be a nice third weapon for a lot of teams, and he's definitely doing that for the Vikes. A nice third read there for Kirk Cousins, and he's not getting any added coverage when you're dealing with Thielen and Diggs over there as well. So a nice year for Aldrick Robinson. And then Mackenzie Alexander has just come on red hot in the last month, and he's covering well now too. He's been excellent as a run defender. Like, he's been arguably the best run defending nickel corner this year, but he's starting to play more confident. He's playing well in coverage. It was against the Dolphins, granted, so take it with a grain of salt, but really, really coming on there. Mackenzie Alexander, a former second-round pick that was looking like he might be getting phased out for a while, but is coming on now and might be a piece of the future of this team. Then we got Seattle at San Francisco. Definitely your typical trap game here for Seattle. It didn't change too much for me about Seattle. Like, I've never considered this to be an explosive offense. It's a running offense that likes big plays from Russell Wilson, which I don't think that's changed. Defensively, They're always going to be better at home than they are on the road. It's a solid defense, but it's really not one you're terrified of, especially when the Seahawks are on the road. So my opinion definitely didn't change about Seattle in this game. You'd like to see them finish it off and get the win. But in a league with a lot of parity, like my opinion of this team didn't change a whole lot, even though some people are going to say, oh, you lost to Nick Mullins and the 49ers. This team is bad now. It's like this overreactive kind of thinking. It's not how I think. So I think Seattle will be fine. I think they're still going to get that 5 seed, and I still don't think anyone really wants to play Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll in the playoffs. But they have shown a side of them in this game and throughout the year that it's not a team that's going to just dominate you on every front like some of these other teams like the Saints and the Chargers are able to do. So then for the 49ers, hey, man, you'd like to get a good draft pick, but you're getting some reasons for optimism as you head into next year. You've got an offensive line playing great. You've got a defense that's figuring some things out. I still think they got a lot of work on that side of the ball to do. You've got Kyle Shanahan in his second year with these players, just killing it as a play caller. You got Dante Pettis, your second-round receiver, just looking like a freaking stud. And you've got Nick Mullins emerging as a guy that you can feel comfortable as your backup quarterback if anything happens to Jimmy Garoppolo. And then obviously you've got Garoppolo coming back. So they're not going to have the number 1 pick, although they could get in that running. But you do get a little momentum off of some of these good performances to close out the year. So let's talk about the studs and duds here. Mike Davis, he looks good every time he touches the ball. He's not a very finessed runner, but he can juke you. He can catch the ball. He can even pass block a little bit. He's fast. I just like what I see from him. A former 49er who was just a freak coming out of South Carolina. So they like to get him the ball. They've got a lot of good running backs here in Seattle. And then Poona Ford, the 5'11 nose tackle, playing great in this game yet again, +2, 68 to a 70 for the rookie out of Texas. And then another rookie here, Trey Flowers, had a really good game here. Safety in college, converts to corner as that lengthy 6'3" press corner. Reminds me a lot of Brandon Browner. I think that's probably his ceiling, which is a good player, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's ever going to be and I try not to use the term lockdown corner on this channel because I don't think that exists anymore. But you know what I'm saying. He's never going to be a great like man-to-man follow you around the field type, but he can be that Brandon Browner and just press you and make some breaks on balls and disrupt balls because of his length. As long as you have good safety help over the top, because he's probably not going to be keeping up with some of the faster receivers in this league. And then for the 49ers, Nick Mullins, +2, 60 to a 62, just has proved to be a solid backup. A lot of it I credit to Kyle Shanahan and this offensive line. And honestly, some of these receivers that are playing really well, I got Pettis and Kittle have been great weapons here. Plus the offensive line has obviously been a good weapon. So things are coming along here for this offense that I think is going to be a really explosive offense next year, getting Garoppolo back. And then Dante Pettis, who we've mentioned a couple times now, +1, 73 to a 74. I was wrong about him. I thought he was a slower, undersized receiver, but I definitely slept on his intangibles and his route running ability. And honestly, his ability after the catch is pretty good too. So he looks like a great weapon and someone that's going to be a huge impact in the future for this team. Second-round pick out of Washington. So now we've got the Patriots Steelers game. Really good game, close game. I picked the Steelers to win this one. They finally come through after I'd picked them many weeks in a row and said not to fade this team away because they still passed the eye test. Well, it was a bit of a sloppy game. Like the Patriots showed yet again that they're just not the Patriots of old. I don't know if the Steelers did a whole lot to really impress you either, but they did end up winning the game. It could have gone either way. These are two teams that we figured would be the probably 1A and 1B in the AFC this year, and it's just not the case. Like they both have problems for sure. I think the Steelers at this point are probably a better football team though. So for the Patriots, no movement. Like I thought they were what they've been. Not really a whole lot to say. I'm not going to be too critical about Tom Brady. We lowered him a few weeks ago. He's just, he's a 41-year-old genius quarterback. And then the defense is bend, don't break. The offense lacks some weapons. They're kind of flat. But we know they're going to be relevant in the playoffs because they're the Patriots. And it's a hard team to analyze because the upside is there. And the coaching's going to be great. And you're still going to have to play lights out to beat this team. But at some point you do need talent. And I just don't know if they have the talent to do it this year. I think their team is worse. And I think the AFC is better than the last couple of years. And then for the Steelers, they still have redeeming qualities. Big Ben is obviously still, a top 10 quarterback. On any given Sunday, he can be a bottom 10, but he can also be a top 5. So, what Big Ben do you get every Sunday in the playoffs or Saturday, I guess? The defense has come on. They can rush the passer. I think they've got problems in the secondary, but Joe Hayden has definitely come on lately in the secondary. And they can run the ball, whoever they put in there. This week it was Jalen Samuels. So the studs here, no one for the Patriots. And so Jalen Samuels plus 367 to a 70. Intriguing player, smart player out of NC State, was actually kind of like a fullback there. No one was really sure what he was going to be in the NFL. Was he going to be a receiver, a tight end? Steelers taking to be a running back. And he gets pushed into the action here due to a holdout and an injury, and he produces just like anyone that they put into the system at running back. Definitely not helping the value of Le'Veon Bell. The fact that you can basically point to a 6th or 5th round fullback coming in and producing the same numbers that Le'Veon Bell had. So the market definitely decreasing for Le'Veon Bell. And then we got Vance McDonald here, +1 for the tight end for the Steelers. Just a really solid season. Consistent dude, can block, will run you over there after the catch. So I like what we're seeing from Vance, 77 to a 78. Antonio Brown's going to come down 1, just has not been a star this year, frankly. Definitely the worst year of his career since he broke out as a number 1 receiver in this league. And frankly, Juju has been a better receiver than Antonio this year, but he's north of 30 now, and you can't continue to play at an elite level forever. He's still a damn good weapon. But just not what he's been the last couple years. And then David DeCastro also, his grades are down. I'm not saying he's a bad guard or anything. He's still one of the best in the NFL, but he was rated massively high after what he did last year. And he just isn't mauling dudes in the same way that he was last year, but still a really good guard. And then Morgan Burnett was our dud of the week. We talked about him. So we've got the Sunday night game here, the Eagles at the Rams. The Rams have been the big talking point that this offense has just not just fallen off, but disappeared. Jared Goff proving myself and anyone that continued to stand by the system quarterback thing for him. He's shown good flashes, and I think he could still be a better player than Matt Ryan. But, man, you get to him and you take away some of his quick reads and you figure his offense out a little bit and you put the play caller, Sean McVay, on his heels a little bit, and it's going to be a disaster, and that's what it's been for Jared Goff. And then for the Eagles, they've just gotten hot. Their defense has come into its own. They've had some serious injuries at corner, but they've figured it out a little bit. Credit this front office for getting these pieces in place despite all these injuries. And then even offensively, you lose your quarterback and Nick Foles comes in and steps up. So credit the Eagles for not giving up on the year. It might be a little too late, but we'll see if they get in ahead of the Vikes or even the Seahawks, I guess. They could make some things interesting. They're a team that's been there and they have played the underdog thing before. So I don't think anyone wants the Eagles in the playoffs, but they've got a ways to go before they can get there. So the studs and duds from this one, Alshon Jeffrey, who we've lowered a couple times the last few weeks, he's going to go +1, 83 to an 84. Really good game here. Dallas Goedert continues his incredible run here, the rookie tight end. He blocks. He's a great weapon. Him and Zach Ertz are just a matchup nightmares. So a really good pick there for the Eagles. Looks like just a stud tight end for years to come. Nick Foles, he's going to get a +1, played great in this game. He really can be accurate down the field when he is on. Now, the reason he sits here at a 70 is because he is going to be inconsistent. But, he really is I'm not going to say a starting quarterback in this league, but he's probably the first guy that isn't. and he's probably going to end up with a starting job next year. Could it be like Miami or Tampa Bay or Jacksonville? Like, definitely. I believe he's going to be a free agent because they have a third-year option that's for like $20 million. I don't see any way that Philly picks that up unless he goes and wins another Super Bowl or something. But that's we're a few weeks away from considering that as a possibility. And then we mentioned those corners for the Eagles. So Avonte Maddox, he's a player out of Pittsburgh that I really like, just a great playmaker. I'm assuming he's a hometown Philly guy, or at least from Pennsylvania, and just, super athletic. He's undersized, but I like those undersized corners. Just his college tape was remarkable, and they take a chance on him, and he's come in. He got injured a few weeks ago, was part of that big run of injuries at corners, but he's back. He made a big interception in this game, but his coverage has been spot on. So I really like what they have in Avonte Maddox. Has been a saving grace for the secondary that just needed somebody at cornerback to step up because they've lost everybody. And then they pick up Cre'Von LeBlanc, former Chicago Bear. He's been playing in the slot and has been able to lock down that slot position the last couple weeks. So we'll see if that's sustainable or not. It's a guy that had some success in Chicago years ago, but we haven't heard of from him for a while. But he's made his way back in to a starting lineup, and he's playing pretty well. So +2, 67 to a 69 for Cre'Von LeBlanc. And then for the Rams, we got Jared Goff. He's going to get a -1, so 81 to an 80. Still paying some respects for some of the things he did earlier this year, but obviously acknowledging the struggles he's had lately. And then Brandon Cooks, -1, 83 to an 82. Like, where are you at, Brandon? This team traded a first-round pick for you and gave you $16 million, and you've been nowhere to be found for the last couple weeks. I was highly critical of this move when they made it. I don't think he's worth either a first-round pick or the money that they have to pay him. He's a great athlete, but I think you can get this type of production from a Ted Ginn, and it's showing. Like, he's fine, but just not a kind of a game-breaking receiver. So we got one more game here. We've got the Saints and the Panthers. We're getting a little long here, but that's all right. You guys can just listen to me talk over the holidays. So the Saints just getting the job done here in Carolina against a beat-up Panthers team. Just, Cam Newton's injured shoulder has this team kind of beat up, whether they have a lot of injuries or not. And then for the Saints, like, the defense is coming on, but the offense is falling off. And you could spin this either way. You hear Michael Lombardi saying, good on the Saints for proving they can win left-handed, or you can take the approach of they're playing left-handed because their offense has not been very good the last few weeks. So they've fallen back to they're still the cream of the crop, but the cream of the crop has fallen back to the middle of the NFL, if that makes sense. So these playoffs are setting up to be interesting. I still don't think anyone is going to, or frankly wants to go into New Orleans. It's probably the favorite for the Super Bowl, as they are looking like they should be getting home field advantage. But I don't think it's preposterous for like the Bears or the Rams or even say like Minnesota or Philadelphia to beat this team. I'm not saying it's likely, but we're seeing a worse version of this Saints team than we were talking about 2 months ago. And then the Panthers are just done. Like, they just shut Cam Newton down. We've been saying it on this channel for 4 weeks that Cam Newton it looks like an Andrew Luck situation. He just can't throw the ball more than 15 yards. So the studs and duds here. Keith Kirkwood, undrafted receiver for the Saints, continues to make plays. Really good athlete out of Temple coming into his own. So 67 to a 68. And then Eli Apple, they traded for him a few weeks ago, and he has found his role here. He had an outstanding game in this one. And back when the Giants were relevant like 3 years ago, Eli Apple was one of their best players, but then he just disappeared from the face of the earth. He's starting to get some of that swagger and his confidence back. And then his college teammate here, Von Bell, he's playing really good run defense. I still got questions about Bell's coverage ability, but has definitely been an active tackler for this defense. And then Alex Anzalone, I'm assuming he's an Italian, so shout out to a fellow Italian. +2, 70 to a 72. Linebacker out of Florida, pretty good athlete, playing some versatile play there at outside linebacker. And then for the Panthers, Eric Reed, just looks like he's regressing for age, but he's only 26. It's probably more about his confidence or maybe injuries have stacked up. But he got burned in this game a couple times. Was sitting on the free agent block for a long time. They finally pick him up mid-season, and we're starting to see why he was available. Like, he just doesn't look like a very good athlete right now like he used to be in his prime for the 49ers when he was honestly one of the best safeties in the league. So that's the studs and duds for the week. It got a little long there, but we still have to do the mailbag. So let me pull up Twitter here. Make sure you guys are following at TFG_football so you can get these mailbag questions in. So here we go. First mailbag question from Slam Bruton. Probably not real name. Which team is going to be next year's Jags, i.e. has high playoff hopes currently, but will implode next year? I usually think of a team that's had high health that is a kind of a out of nowhere team. And the healthy teams like that this year, I think of, Cleveland, Dallas, Chicago. Those are three teams that I think are going to have a lot of hype next year that have shown better things here in the last third of the season, that are healthy, that have really kind of had everything go their way for the last third of the year. And that's usually when you get you're just a hater. No, it's just facts. It's just history. Like, you just look every year at the teams that got hot at the end of the season that didn't have a lot of players injured. Like, other teams are going to catch up to you at some point because the momentum gets wiped when the season is done, so that you getting hot doesn't matter. And everyone else enters next year with a full slate of health. So I think of like Chicago, Dallas, and Cleveland are probably three teams that are going to have a lot of playoff hype that may or may not. And all three of these teams have questionable quarterbacks. I think Baker's the best quarterback of those three teams. But those are definitely the teams that I would say have that recipe. Or you could point to teams that have had injuries that are going to still have the hype. So like San Francisco or Philly, maybe Green Bay. Like, there's still going to be hype for those teams because of their quarterbacks. But you're also asking a lot of those teams to kind of rebound. So you could go either way there. But those aren't like teams that were hot this year, I guess. What will the Colts record be next year? I'd say they're a 10 or 11 win team. Like, I'd be pretty surprised if the Colts don't at least make the playoffs next year. Like, Tennessee and Houston are still going to be good next year, so I don't know if that division's a lock, but they'll be good. They'll be good. They got cap space. Okay, that's just Joseph annoying me. What's the best Radiohead album? I couldn't tell you one. Thoughts on Josh Jackson's rookie year? Bad. He's not a corner. He could maybe be a nickel corner, but he probably needs to change to safety, in my opinion. Just reacts slow to like crossing routes, and I don't know if it's the coaching in Green Bay or what, but he was a great player at Iowa, but his skill just hasn't translated to the NFL. I think he could be a really good safety though. Good ball skills. What should the Lions do this offseason? Get better? I mean, they have weapons. They probably need a replacement for Golden Tate. Maybe you sign like Jamison Crowder or something, but you got a running back, you got a number one receiver, you got a quarterback, you got an offensive line. Do you keep Jim Bob Cooter? Maybe. Most of the good offensive, minds are going to be getting head coaching offers, so I don't know if you're necessarily going to get an upgrade. The defense, I think, is headed in the right direction. You might have to draft some defensive talent, but I think Patricia's at least done a good job with that defense. Would it be possible to build a Madden 19 roster solely based off PFF grades? No, I don't think it would be. You guys know I'm a PFF employee. I'm not going to talk bad about PFF, but there's certain things that will skew, I think, the ratings a little bit. Like, just a few players. I think 98% across the board, the ratings are extremely reliable, but there's a select few players, I think, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that certain schemes are going to ask a lot of those players. A couple guys that come to mind would be C.J. Mosley, Malcolm Jenkins, I think Landon Collins. Some of these more versatile defenders that you're asking to really, you're putting these guys in unfavorable situations that might give you a matchup advantage elsewhere. But those players tend to not grade out as well. And then it goes vice versa. I think the reason you see like a Blake Martinez grade out so well is they don't ask him to do a lot. Like, just go tackle the runner after he's 5 yards downfield, and he'll grade out well as a tackler. So there's certain areas that aren't necessarily considered with that surface level PFF grade that you still need to take into consideration when you're doing like Madden ratings, like I do. So that should be sufficient for that question. Andrew Luck, best QB in football. Got to keep in mind that Deion hasn't played a snap this year. Deion Kane hasn't played a snap this year. Decent prospect out of Clemson. Well, I don't think Deion Kane not playing a snap is making an impact on how good Andrew Luck is. I like Deion Kane coming out, but I mean, we're talking about probably a replacement level young receiver. But is Andrew Luck the best quarterback in football? I'm going to say no, but he's up there. I think Pat Mahomes is playing at a higher level right now. I think I'd still take Rodgers and Breeze over him. But he's in the top 5 for sure. This is a good one. You've stated that QBs who lack mobility are used by the scouting term system QB and will never truly be elite due to them not being able to create offense. You used examples such as Matt Ryan, Jared Goff, and Josh Rosen. Are there any QBs who are exceptions to the rule? Yeah, absolutely. So that's typically what you refer to in a scouting report of a system quarterback. But there are traits that a quarterback can pick up to transcend scheme. And that's when you look at like Tom Brady, a little bit of Drew Brees, even like Rodgers does this, even though he can rely on his mobility. Phillip Rivers, even at times Matt Ryan, but not nearly as consistently. And it's the ability to throw receivers open is a big thing, like just pure arm talent. And that's why there's some upside for Jared Goff too. And some of it's instinct, some of it's just arm talent. You talk about a system quarterback is a player that needs everything around him to be perfect. So any type of trait that can transcend that is going to make you a transcendent quarterback and put you above that system quarterback thing. So, I was talking about this in the offseason. So I have my 5 traits. I'm trying to remember what they were off the top of my head. So it was the ability to throw receivers open. There's play extension, whether it's mobility, but there's also mental play extension. This is what Tom Brady's so good at, where like he'll see the rush coming and he'll have, say, a curl flat combo on the right side. And he'll use his eyes to hold that linebacker that's going to keep that running back, give him like 2 extra feet of space, which is kind of hard to explain on a podcast. But there's things you can do that open things up outside of the scheme. And then, there's like raw arm talent, the ability to make throws that no one else can. I can't remember all 5 of them right now. I think mobility is the 5th. But, there's other ways to do it. But mobility is the easiest way by far. Let's do a couple more here. Do I like what I've seen from Avonte Maddox, the Eagles corner? I talked about him. Will the Pats win a playoff game? So they'll probably be the 3 seed, which means they're playing either the Ravens or the Colts in Foxborough. I think they'd beat the Ravens. I think the Colts very well might beat them. I think the Colts are just red hot right now. I don't see Lamar Jackson going into Foxborough and beating Bill Belichick. What do you do if you're the Cardinals? Because they're interesting, IMO. That's tough case. That's a tough case. You need youth on offense and defense. You need an offensive line. You need receivers. You need to do everything you can to build up Josh Rosen, because I think he is a system guy, but he could be good. But you can't let the defense fall apart at the same time. And they have a couple good players on defense, but they need a lot more talent on that side of the ball too. They have a lot of work to do. They are 2 or 3 years away. And it's going to be really hard for them to not ruin Josh Rosen in that time. So I'm not very optimistic about the Cardinals' future, to be honest. And you also keep in the fact that their coach is probably going to get fired next year. So you're going to be basically resetting again next year. So they're not looking great. Will the Cowboys lose in the first round of the playoffs again? Well, the 2 NFC teams aren't the best. The wild card teams. I think Seattle could beat them. Minnesota could beat. Those are 3-point games. Those will come down to the wire. Dallas could absolutely lose. All right, last question here. If you were the Dolphins GM, would you trade up to get one of this year's quarterback prospects or stick with Tanny for one more year? Yeah, I would stick with Tannehill. As low as I am on Tannehill, he's probably still the best quarterback in this class. You could maybe try to spice things up and just try and suck and get a legitimate franchise quarterback next year and move on from Tannehill and get Nick Foles and sell that off as being an upgrade, and then just hope it all goes to hell and you actually end up with a top 5 pick. But they're kind of stuck in purgatory right now, and they're in a tough spot in terms of finding a way to make it a Super Bowl team as opposed to just a playoff team. Because if I'm the general manager, that's what I'm trying to do, is get to the Super Bowl, not just make the playoffs. But some teams like Miami and Cincinnati seem content with that. So that's it, guys. Use promo code FranchiseGuy on SeatGeek. Hit the like button here on YouTube. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy football. Merry Christmas as well. Cheers as always. We'll see you next time. Peace out.